All right, folks, how are you doing? A little bit of a hiccup to get started, but that's okay. That's the whole thing about doing a live stream. It's live. So yeah, there's a precautionary thing, and I'm glad that they do this, but we use Streamyard, and because of it, every now and again they'll make you like refresh and log in as a sort of protective measure so that somebody just doesn't, I don't know, if somebody hacks your account or whatever, you won't be able to hop in there and take somebody else's StreamYard account. So it's a good measure. It's a good measure.
It's not a Thursday without some technical difficulties anyway. So yeah, thanks for shaking it up.
So what is up? We got people already watching.
Hey everybody.
So one of the cool things, guys, that we've been able to do here is kind of start talking about different topics that we wanted to dive into. So today we're going to jump into one that's very deep and has a lot of reservoirs as far as talking about this general topic. So we're going to be talking about anxiety, guys. And I think it's very important. It's a very important topic to discuss because here at these times where we have so much going on with the holidays, and I know like even you, Chantel, have so much to do with finishing out your Q4 and trying to finish out client work. And then you still have to be a mom and worry about Christmas and everything else that goes along with it. It can be stressful and overwhelming. Oh yeah. And by the way, guys, we are in the middle of a pandemic. So
there's that too.
There's that too that we can't forget, so that's the whole nother thing about visiting your family and friends and stuff like that you would normally do during the holidays, so that's another thing to look at whenever you're talking about this. So I would love to hear your guys kind of opening thoughts about what we're talking about today. So why don't we start with you, Mr. Lebowitz, since you're already smiling. So let's go ahead and see what's working with your mind there. I see the cogs moving. So let's go ahead and get started with you.
It's always moving. I think it's a really good conversation today because we are in a time in between all the holidays where it does tend to increase our anxiety. But I'm also watching a lot from people with anxiety from social media with not the world. So I think this is going to be a great conversation, and hopefully the community will join in today and talking about their anxieties of what we all do experience it in ways. Everybody uses ways to cope with
it. Well, how about you, Miss Chantel? How have you excuse me, want to approach the topic? Because again, it's
yes. I was just on a call yesterday with an amazing individual named Paul Can, and he's new to the area that I live in. So we were talking a little bit more and catching up. And what he does is he runs a business off of his name. Yes, I can. Paul, I should get affiliate credits for how much I talk about you. But we went through this discussion about how loving yourself and self-care is critical. It's a key piece in managing anxiety, OCD, and depression, because if you don't have that self-worth built up, it's hard to put yourself first and prioritize that self-care, right? So we talked a lot about a lack of intention in the world and how we're all on autopilot. Now that we've adjusted to the pandemic and knowing that things are going to be crazy and we're going to need to be flexible, we've all kind of switched that autopilot flame on for when the next big switch is going to come. When are we going to get out of lockdown and all of that jazz? So it's important to make sure that you're not on autopilot, that you're living intentionally every single day that you wake up so that you can prioritize that self-care and taking care of yourself to manage those anxious behaviors.
Yes.
Doesn't living in the future causes anxiety also. So if you're waiting for what's next, that's another. We're bringing anxiety back into our world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and you know, like I said, there's different forms of anxiety that people have, you know, apart from the everyday stress that people feel, you know, that we're actually, you know, sometimes they say stress is good. It's a good motivator to do things, but when it becomes a part where it's an element where it kind of takes a toll on your body and it really takes control of you emotionally, I think that's where you start crossing that line of where stress now becomes the part that is really running your life. And you know, there's, like I said, there's different avenues of stress, you know. So people can just have social anxiety, right? So if somebody, for example, is a real introvert, does not like being
That's
around.
me. I was like the epitome of a social anxiety person. Like going to any event, I would drive my car around the block at least 3 times, like trying to get that game going. Like, you can do this, girl. Go park your car and then we'll do the next thing, you know? Like living in the present, right? Like Jason said, a lot of people live in the future. So making sure that you understand that and you take those little baby steps to get there, that's important. And you're like you said, there's so many different kinds of anxiety. I feel like I'm mumbling so much today because I have so much passion and so much to say about this topic. But really and truly, those little things in living right now, taking deep breaths, doing that breath work like Jason loves to talk about, Wim Hof, right? But that present moment and just breathing brings so much solace and connection to that present moment. So when you feel a little anxious, just start taking those deep breaths and counting.
No, and you know, kind of to what you were alluding to there. You know, that's one of the things that I've may not ever dealt with, like social anxiety. I've just been an extrovert all my life. Just been one of those people.
I can tell you're a people person.
But you do have sometimes where certain things set in. I mean, I've had deep-seated separation anxiety. For those who don't know, very long time ago, my mother left me and my other siblings. And that was kind of hard to deal with at such a young age, you know, to grow up. And yes, you know, my father was there for us, but it was different whenever you're so used to having your mom in your everyday life. And then one day it's no longer there. And I kind of carried that along into adulthood in a lot of my relationships, you know, this anxiety of, oh, what happens if we break up and she leaves? And it was such a tough thing to learn to deal with, because again, it was like you could get it if you could fall in love and it could be in a really good relationship and you could feel everything like you're on top of the world, and then that anxiety starts coming in. Am I doing things right? Is this what she wants, or is this what's supposed to be happening? I mean, and sometimes it ruined a good relationship because I was too worried about that.
Right.
And that was one of those things that was kind of driving me. So that's why I said there's different levels of this,
right.
Of having these anxieties, that people, again, have different ways of, you know, like I said, I've never had to deal with social anxiety, separation anxiety. I've never had to do that. So it's interesting to hear you when you say that, you know, that's what you had to do, was to build yourself up so much so you could do these things. I mean, especially in a world where we're dealing with social media.
I know, it's crazy. Well, also the sense that you talk about that social anxiety and how that plays into my relationships as well. I have this severe fear of commitment, and being a business owner and signing on clients, I usually do 3-month engagements instead of a year retainer because of those fears are still playing a big part of my life. And it's also something, you know, that plays into other relationships as well. So whether it's business or personal, there's always those triggers that come into play. But really managing that fear and driving it is everything. And it's hard. It's easier said than done, right? Nothing is easy in life. Nothing worth having comes easy. But that's the beauty of it, that fight and that challenge and that adventure to get a hold of things and really challenge yourself is what makes it all worthwhile.
Mm.
Jason, do you have any favorite books or anything that I know, and speak into your microphone because you're quiet and muffled. Do you have any suggestions for managing anxiety?
Well, I would say before managing anxiety, you said something when you first started this conversation about lack of self-worth. And for me, that was my anxiety in relationships, was the lack of self-worth caused extreme anxiety in unhealthy relationships, to the point where I shut down because it was like walking on eggshells, and you never knew what you said, what I'd say, would that set the person off or not? So it causes extreme anxiety 24/7 because you don't know when it's going to come or go, which was for me a lack of self-worth. So for me, it's not so much books, but it was just more of finding, just unwiring, rewiring with mindset of trying to get to the root of it, which I was able to find was I was missing that connection to myself.
Beautiful.
Ooh. Wow, Jason. Well, like I said, and for some, even that we're talking about anxiety here, you also have to remember there's such deep-rooted anxieties that are built in, like PTSD. For a lot of people, I mean, I was talking to a few people who were ex-military, and that's one thing for a lot of them to get past. It's a very hard thing because they spent time over in Iraq, and then when they came back, it was a different sort of world than what they left when they came back. It was things that they saw, lives that they saw lost, and it really does leave a deep rooted mental health disorder inside of them where it's so hard to control. So I mean,
and it's so hard to understand as well as an outsider to try to get into a mindset like that. And mental health is something that's so different, and it is relative to the person that's fighting that war, if you will. My dad was a Vietnam vet, and I remember I could never go to him when I was scared in the middle of the night, because if I woke him, there were times when he would get violent because of that PTSD that would occur. So I remember that, like, the first time I was hit accidentally because he woke up and that was his instant response. It was like, oh God, those are the things that then traumatize you. But really, I think it all has to do with grieving and walking through it and being in the moment and understanding what you've gone through isn't still happening, and you can get through this. There is another way out as long as you work through it with these healthy habits. Again, bringing it back around to habits, right? Like we talked about, was that last week already?
Last week already. Yes, it was. And, but when you're talking about these sort of things, you got to remember that above all, there's avenues to get help. There's avenues to things that, first of all, it's just at least acknowledging the problem that you feel that you have something, right? And then at that point going, okay, this is not normal how I feel.
Yes. And putting your pride aside. I feel like that was a big obstacle in seeking help, especially for a lot of people, especially men that are proud and have to wear that strength and, deal with that, like, what is that, toxic masculinity?
Yes.
So when I went through I share a lot about my story, but I went through a time when I was basically living out of my Mustang and didn't really have a place to call home and didn't have food. So I would grab the free crackers and ketchup packets from the cafeteria, and that was fine. But I didn't realize how many resources there were until I hit a second entry into that same kind of cycle. And there's so many resources out there, so many, but you can't let your pride hold you back from getting the help that you truly need.
No, and that's, I tell everybody right there, that's one of the most first things that people should actually do is just seek help in any way, shape, or form. Because again, that's one of the things that, like, when people, and I hate to go on this subject, when people talk about suicide, that was one of the first things that people to go, they never reached out to me because they feel like there's something that there's a stigma, I guess, of saying that, oh, I feel suicidal, that people are going to look at you differently and judge you differently. Same thing with having anxieties, right? It's the same sort of deal of, oh, well, there's just nothing wrong with you. You're just this or you're just that. They give you a judgmental sort of.
Yeah. Stigma. Yeah. I know. That's something, again, that we were talking about yesterday was the element of shame and how much we all love Brene Brown and how she talks about dropping shame because shame doesn't do anything good for you. So the moment that you drop it and you can embrace all of the flaws, all of the darkness, all of the skeletons in your closet that make you the beautiful, unique creature that you are today, there's only one person with your exact story and your exact journey. So you need to embrace it, or you don't need to, I suppose, but that's where you really start to love yourself and build the full picture.
And go ahead, Jason.
No, I was gonna say, and through that all is knowing that you're not alone.
You're never alone, right?
You're never alone. It's just, and especially now that how we've had to all adapt to how we contact each other and get in hold of each other. It's no longer, I can just drive over to somebody's house. Now it's, I gotta make sure a phone call or a video
chat.
You're
such an extrovert, Gabe.
Yes.
Like I would never go to somebody's house or even call them.
Wow.
Yeah. I do not answer my phone. Like that social anxiety is crazy.
Dude, that's because that's the first thing where I would be like, I haven't heard it, especially if it's somebody that I've been close with for a while or something, and I haven't heard or seen them anywhere. That's the first inclination in my mind is, well, let me go find,
Let's just over at their house.
Yeah, exactly. If I know where they live, I'm going to go by there because I want to just say, find out how you're doing. What is, if there's anything wrong, it could be nothing at all, but it's just that inside of me of wanting to make sure that somebody's okay. And that's why I send messages all the time to people that I might not have a conversation with in months. Out of the blue, I just say, you know what, they're on my mind today. Let me send a message or send a video or record a video. It's so simple now. I get my phone, send a message, and then 9 times out of 10 I get responses of, wow, thank you so much. I needed it. Or
that's a really good idea. Yeah.
And it's just part of what we're talking about here because again, there's so much going on that people have to deal with, and it's now getting to the point where people are starting to realize that this pandemic isn't even now with we're talking about a sort of a vaccination coming. It's not going to be it's still not going to be right away where it's going to be able to go, oh, everything's open again. You can just go do whatever you want. There's still things that you have to pay attention to while you're doing it. People still stress out about this. And now people are stressing out about the holidays, right? It's like, oh, Christmas time.
Quotas.
and quotas and getting things done that you're supposed to do at the end of the year. So I can understand how it can be tough. And it can be, if you already have an anxiety, how it can just trigger it and send you into that whole state of, gosh, it is tough to get past because, again, there's a whole science, there's a whole neuroscience about studying about how important anxiety is and how our minds operate.
Yes.
And
yes.
And that's a whole nother topic on its own. It's just talking about the neuroscience of anxiety.
Neuroplasticity and reframing. I mean, that's a great way to deal with anxiety as well, right? So thinking about neuroplasticity and how we can rewire our brains to react and respond differently. We don't need to respond with that anxious behavior as long as we reframe the challenge that's in front of us, right? So instead of dealing with an interruption as an anxious trigger, meaning, oh no, I'm never going to get this done. I'm on a quick time crunch. I got to score 10 more clients in the next 15 days before Christmas. What am I going to do? You can just, take a break and breathe and say, okay, this is a moment to stop and pause and reflect and breathe and center myself and then move forward so that you can table that anxious behavior or just kind of pause, acknowledge it, put it there, and then come back to it later.
Exactly. So, I mean, there's so many methods that you can do on your own to kind of help, what we're talking about here, to kind of help you get out of those sort of situations where you find yourself where you can be so overwhelmed you get a panic attack. I mean, that's that's just your body just telling you, sounding all the alarms that something is wrong.
Stop! Something's happening and it's bad. And make it stop.
So have either of you ever experienced one? I mean, I did before, but I've it was.
They're embarrassing when they happen. It's so embarrassing in hindsight.
Well, it is, because you well, when you think about it, you go, man, I when I was having one, I didn't realize I was having one. It felt just like all of a sudden I could not breathe. There was this heat all around me. I just felt this instantaneous feeling of like, almost like I was gonna die.
Yeah.
It was the worst feeling in the world. And I remember I was like, I think I fell down in my bathtub, where it just happened because I was overwhelmed so much so. And I remember my wife coming, she's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I'm not okay. I was having this huge panic attack." And she's had a few of those herself, so she kind of told me, "That's what it sounds like you're having," when I explained it to her. And she was one of those ones, you just had what my wife has, this very, very herself, where she has overwhelming anxiety. I mean, so much so we had her, she's on medication, and she does go through therapy to kind of help her control it, because it can, I mean, just the simplest thing like going to the store. She has a real social anxiety too, where going to the store can be overwhelming, where it's like almost to the point of breakdown. And then when I recognize it now, I know that I can step in and hopefully try to help her.
That's beautiful. The buddy system works so well. Having somebody there to support you and go with you to the store and leave the house. Absolutely. Now, there's those differences as well between agoraphobia and social anxiety as well. So that's something, is a whole nother topic to discuss, but really reframing. What's up, Charlie? I found journaling to be a good way to look at my own issues without feeling. Yes. Journaling. I'm actually, right before, when we were going through all these technical difficulties, I have a Word document up, and I was typing a letter to my high school creative writing teacher, thanking her for teaching me what she did at that time, because that journaling is such an expressive release that we need to get through. If we don't have a therapist or somebody to talk to, our journal is that therapist. Our journal is that element that listens to what we have to say and doesn't respond or give you unwarranted advice, right?
Yeah.
Jason, do you journal? Jason's so darn quiet today.
I've been talking, just the mic doesn't work. No.
Sorry.
I used to journal. I used to, every single night when I went through a dark period, I used to every single night. It wasn't really journaling. It was just writing. It was like a word dump. So in a way, I guess you could say it is journaling, but it was my way of just whatever thoughts came out. And later I couldn't make sense of them if you read them. But I wound up actually over time creating it into a book. And I wrote a book using everything I wrote and building a story out of it. So it almost like was reinterpreted multiple times into a book. Well, and it got me through a dark time.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially you just described journaling. So yeah, you were. I mean, even if it is getting thoughts out, you don't have to have these big, huge cognitive paragraphs in there to be journaling. It is about getting the things that you feel like either emotionally out there, whether it's a gratitude journal, whether it's just a journal to share your emotions. It is your own personal place to drop, like you said. You're essentially doing it. You're taking a word dump, like you said, writing down things that are coming in your head and getting it out so quickly that that it's no longer just sitting up there on your mind. And it's one of the things where I've found journaling to be such a big thing in my life too. I'm like you. I keep notes, and I just so you know, I write notes down here from our conversations and things that we have here. this is just something that I've done since I've started doing these things, but I've always done these things. I find it so, I find it therapeutic for me, just for me to go back and read my own journey about where I've been, and the things, like I said, I can go back and find I want to go actually read it now that we're talking about it. Go back and find my journal. But when I had my panic attack, what it felt like, I actually, I logged it because, that was one of those things that I have never experienced in my life. I mean, there's times like that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, a lot of people with panic attacks do think it's like a heart attack because it does feel like you are dying. It does feel like the world is ending.
Yeah, I like I said, I'd never felt anything like that ever before in my life, where I was just scared shitless. And I don't mean to do it, but I was just in that place where it scared me very much. Where at this point, it even caused me for a while to have an anxiety about death.
Oh yeah, my husband has a severe fear of death. Like, can't even talk about it without freaking out. It's crazy, and I don't even know how to deal with that. But with a gratitude journal, there's beautifuls of both, right? Because there's the gratitude and the positivity side, but then you don't want to have toxic positivity. You don't want to make it feel like you can only be positive. You can only see the sunshine, right? So having those separate and keeping them going where you have a safe space to throw out the word dump of all the negative stuff is so important too. It's so empowering to see that as well. I haven't journaled in a long time, other than what I do on social media, which is kind of a journal.
It is. Yes, it's a vlog.
It is. It's blogging or whatnot. But my high school journal, there's a lot of dark poems in there. No.
I can imagine. So here's one.
But Chantel, just to clarify, it's the after death, not death itself, coming from your husband.
Yeah. Well, definitely not the death.
Well, it's his comment. He wanted to clarify that for you.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah. So
Great.
There you go. So he's saying yes. I concur with that.
At least he's talking about it right now. Way to go, babe.
Way to go.
Step forward. You did it.
Here's one. Have you tried EFT? Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
What is EFT? What does that stand for?
It's emotional. If I don't mess it up, EFT is emotional. Oh gosh, why am I forgetting it now? Okay, hold on. I'll pull it up right now. It's actually what it is. Okay, emotional focus therapy. And there are things that you can do in EFT, like things like tapping is one way. There's different approaches to it, and so I actually have done it before, and I've actually done tapping live on my show.
What is that? Like, explain it. Do it.
Okay. So, tapping is
emotional freedom technique.
Yes, that is it. And what it is it's almost like you're setting pressure points or trigger points on your body, and it's a repetitive motion, and you're using you're using that along with neuro-linguistic programming to kind of open up a little bit. And the easiest way to try to describe it to people is there's some people that can be hypnotized, and there's some people that can't. And there's a way to kind of tap into the subconscious mind a little bit, and that's one of the methods that they use, right? So if you've ever seen anybody hypnotized who can actually fall under hypnosis, it is weird. I did. Look, I'm going to tell you the truth. I didn't believe this either until I did it. And the only reason that it happened to me, because it happened on the spot. I had no preconceived notions that we were going to do it. The lady that I had on, that's was part of her expertise. And we went through the motions of doing it. And I tell people now, and I look at it, and I can remember it now that I go back and watch it. Episode 80 on my channel, it was with Katie Nall was her name. We did tapping for the first time. I'd never tried it before. I just only heard of it. And for 5 minutes, I felt like I was. It feels like you're drunk, but you're not drunk. I felt like I was there, I know I was there, but I did not remember what I was saying or what I was doing.
Would you say an altered state? Is that the right word for it?
Yes, it exactly was.
Interesting.
It was, and it's. I mean, and for some people it works. And for some people, they just have they it's not gonna. No matter how hard you try it, it's just not gonna be good because it's not. They're very strong-willed in certain points, and others you can't. So you have to really look at it from that point of view. So that's why I said I went into it with a very open mind because it was done like this on the spot. So I didn't have a time to think about it. I was just like, she's like, let's do it now. So I said, okay, I'm on live. Let's do it. Right. And it was weird. It was the weirdest thing ever.
Yeah.
But,
it's weird watching those shows where people go through that. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm not buying it.
Well, here's the thing. And I tell people this, look, and this is the thing. Howie Mandel has a thing of OCD. He does not love to touch people's hands.
I've seen those.
Germaphobe.
Yeah.
He is a huge germaphobe. He won't. So this guy who was a hypnotist went on the show, hypnotized him so much that he was.
Come on, like Howie is an actor.
Well, I get that too.
I'm sorry.
I get that too, but I think in some ways though. People have actually said that, and these are just people that I've kind of had conversations who've gone through it before. They'll tell me whether or not it's BS. I've tried it before, and they'll tell me, "Yeah, I faked it." Yeah. Right? And again, just so I could go along with it. But then I've actually had people who said, "Yeah, I've done it before," and it was kind of like what I'm talking about. You're there, you're in the moment.
It's interesting because I think that you have to be that kind of individual that's okay with surrendering, like trusting in something. And I'm definitely not that person. I'm to be hypnotized. Nope.
Well, there is a level of that you have to be where that point where you can let somebody go in and kind of do these things to you. But again, if I would have done this 5 years ago, or we would have tried that 5 years ago, I was like you. It would have been like, no way, no,
not letting you
in at all.
Crack like a duck or something while I'm hypnotized. Nope.
Well, I didn't think. I don't think. Well, for me, it wasn't so much as being hypnotized as it was is that I just felt like Jason said, an altered state.
Yeah. Was it like a deep meditation or something?
Almost where you feel like okay, like we can have this conversation now, but there were just certain, like there were words and things that I didn't remember. And I had to go back and watch those 5 minutes exactly afterwards. And let me tell you what, after I was done with that show, I had never written like I haven't written it before in a very long time. I actually sat down and journaled for like 3 hours, just writing all kinds of stuff that was just coming to mind. I guess, I don't know, there's something that was pulled back, and I just said, you know what, the floodgates were open, and I sat there and I just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. So I didn't finish writing everything until like 11 p.m. that night, where I was like, wow. I mean,
way to dump all those words into a journal, buddy.
So it is the craziest thing to go back, and I will say, for some people, it is. There's no way you can cross that plateau with somebody. There's just not.
So many different elements of grieving and evolving or living through it, and having those different exercises.
Yes. So even Trent says they use it a lot with addiction.
Even Trent is obsessed with, what's that podcaster, that guy that used to be a wrestler? An amazing podcast. What is it? Come on. Come on.
Let's put in the comments. We'll let him. Anyways,
yes, those topics are really, really becoming popular because we're seeing that bringing it back to being on autopilot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that we need to take more control of our own self-care instead of being programmed to wake up, pour our cup of coffee, go to the office, get our work done, go back home, pick up the kids from school, etc. You know what I mean? Where there's so many different interruptions that we could give ourselves throughout the day to feed our souls and become a healthier individual. Because when we do these kinds of meditations and self-care and really prioritize wellness, that's when we can, have a much lower chance of having chronic illness and cancer and all these other ailments that come into play when your immune system is so suppressed from stressors like that.
Well, he's there. It is.
Joe Rogan.
Joe
Yes.
Rogan, right?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So, but no, it's
John friggin' Palmer.
no,
Nice.
not John friggin' Palmer. No. Okay. What were you saying, Jason?
No, I know we're going to run out of time here. We were out of time, but I do want to, for the next time, is really to carry on about this with social media and the comparison to others and the anxiety that's bringing on to a whole new, it's a new type of anxiety. And we actually tested it in real time last week with an anxiety coach on TikTok and watched as she had the conversation with her followers. And they were really honest about talking about social media today and for them comparing themselves to others, feeling anxiety, feeling the depression. So there's definitely a kind of a new level of anxiety that social media is bringing on for a comparison to others. So that's a really important topic that I want to bring that up next time.
Ooh, that sounds very interesting. You can probably go really in depth on that because that's I think there's a lot going just beyond the surface level of talking about that because we are now social creatures, whether or not we want to believe it or not. Even if you're introvert and extrovert, you are still operating on social media. You're either engaging in it or you're watching it in some way, shape, or form.
Participating.
Yes, you are participating, and that is part of why I want to touch on this a little bit more. That's I'm glad you brought that up, Jason. That's a very interesting topic to look at.
See you next Thursday.
See you next Thursday.
I will try to see if we can get the anxiety coach to come on if I can get her, because it was in real time of watching her have this conversation and watching the people on TikTok talk about their experience, and they were brutally honest, which was really refreshing to see them be honest about that. So we'll bring that.
Oh, that's funny. Well, okay, that's cool. So guys, thank you guys so much again. Thank you, Chantel. Thank you, Jason, so much. And then everybody who's been a part of this one. And please excuse, this won't happen next week with the technical difficulty we had jumping on here.
Yeah. Well, also, Jason, do you have a plan or anything that you can announce yet about the XXO Masterminds and getting those connections together? So anybody who is interested in these kinds of topics and discussing them in a safe space, Jason.
We are going to be starting a mastermind, a masterclass, a weekly masterclass with a guest speaker every single week talking about these types of subjects and for participation with our community. So if you would DM me, and I'll be putting out a post later today to get information so we can, if you'd like to be a part of this.
Oh, wow. There's one. I like that a little bit.
Rob, the witty Rob.
So he's saying social media has become like going to Las Vegas and getting off the elevator and being overwhelmed by sights and sounds. Mm-hmm. After a few days, it's sensory overload. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's, again, like I said, but that's the thing though. We do get it, but we're all willing participants.
Yeah, but imagine as well living in a world, so that sensory overload, right? Talking about the differently abled community. When I go into things like that, especially having conditions that are affected by lights and sounds, that is like extremely amplified on overdrive. So think about those that are highly sensitive on social media, because there are so many that don't talk about these things, but are ultra sensitive to the trolling and those negative behaviors. So I'm super excited about the discussion.
Yeah. So and you're even talking about people who are on the spectrum as well. You know, they have these things that can really set them off if you don't kind of pay attention to it. So yeah, that's one of the things that I have to start putting a warning on my shows, because I've been going like with these very psychedelic backgrounds and colors.
Gabe, please, that warning is nice.
So I need to put a warning on there that, hey, if you have a sensitivity, turn away now.
Well, and another thing is there a way to plug in a caption tool to Streamyard? Because that would be awesome too for accessibility.
Nick is on here right now, and I think he was testing that out.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Nick, if you would chime in, I believe you were testing that recently.
Yeah. and there's a and that's just another thing that, again, testing what you can actually do. So he does captioning in OBS.
Yeah.
So yes, there is a way, guys. I actually do know of a way to do it in Streamyard, but it's a little bit more convoluted than what it would be like in using something like OBS, because it is it's StreamYard has a lot of protections built in to their platform here. So you have to learn how to operate within it. But I have found ways. But Nick has done this before, where he kind of puts the live captions in his OBS. So, but I think that's one of the things that LinkedIn should think about. Maybe you should have
no doubt. Well, they have a lot of room to grow in terms of accessibility. I have a long list for them.
I'm pretty sure you do.
Talking about backgrounds, while Kelsey's on here, I think for Kelsey, I think she should design. She's an amazing artist. Design the background for you.
Kelsey.
About that. Yeah.
Yes. Throw it out. Designer in the house.
Custom Gabe background, Kelsey. What do you think?
Well, I would like that, but now y'all are making me blush. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. So, but I love that Nick actually does it. He's thinking of the deaf community. They can watch lives in real time, and he's done this where he's done it with his OBS, and a lot of the times it's almost 90% on target with wording in real time.
That's fantastic.
So I love that he's doing that, and that's where I got the idea from myself by watching. I said, I would love that. That's a whole nother way. So there is a service that you can actually use on any live stream. It doesn't matter if it's in this one or anywhere else, or even on live events, where what they do is you set up an account with them, and they have an actual transcriber putting in real time what your stream is saying and everything else. So it pulls the caption in it, and they shoot for, I think their advertising is like 97% on word target with live captioning.
Yeah.
So
we need to upgrade for sure. It's time to level up. It's been too long, darn it.
Yes, it has. So I think
what is Nick House Slytherin? What is that? What that means? I'm thinking Harry Potter. No, darn it.
No. I'm in a group, and we call ourselves the Vipers.
Okay.
Why they love to share that.
That's okay. I'm Hufflepuff anyway, so whatever.
Whatever, right? All right. Thank you, Chantel.
Love you so much. Thanks everybody for tuning in on the conversation. It was awesome.
You guys are incredible, and we will be back again next week, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. We will be going more in depth on the social anxiety, and hopefully we may or may not have a guest, but we'll let you guys know. So
social media.
There you go. You guys have a good one, and we will be back next week. Goodbye, everybody.
See you guys.
Bye.